Welcome back, everybody. This is Sandra McEwen again, and we're back to my fingers because we're going to be doing some actual enameling today, which I know is very excited because we've spent a lot of time getting all these pieces ready. We've washed our enamels last week, and now we are ready to actually put the enamels into our pieces. So it's a very momentous occasion. And I have a bunch of pieces that I'm ready to enamel. Some pieces I have put only, I fired the wires in place. You can see this piece right here. Their wires are nice and inlaid. And a few pieces I've actually done one coat already, and I'm going to show you those real fast. I've done some greens and yellows, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So to get started, I kind of like to warm up with this. So I always pick the easiest. Seriously, don't start with the hard thing. You're not going to start with this piece. You're going to start with this piece. And so I have two pieces actually I've got three pieces that use my purple enamels. So I've got my purple enamels ready to go. I've got my little sketch here of what the colors I'm wanting to go for this pair of cufflinks. Just shades of purple, very simple. And it always helps to figure out your colors before you start breaking out the enamels, because although I do change as I go, I make different decisions, but I kind of like to know where I'm heading when I get started. And so I have 4 different shades of purple here, and I have them washed in these little containers. And the only other tools that I have right with me I've got 2 paintbrushes, which I'll use to insert the enamels. Don't spend a ton of money on paintbrushes because the glass kind of breaks them down a little bit. This is a 5-0 whatever paintbrush. It's a little bit larger. And then I also have this little one, which I just got last weekend. Look, it's 20-0 paintbrush. Look how tiny that is. I really like this paintbrush. Also, I like it's a little shorter, and we'll use these 2 paintbrushes to insert our enamels into the pieces. I also have a slightly larger one right there, but I very rarely use it because I like to, fuss around with it a lot. So I've got that. You can't see it, but off screen I've got 2 little, here you can hear it. No, you can't. 2 little glasses of water, and I've got a little paper towel with a little bit of water on it. Just perfect setup as if you were going to do watercolors. You know how you kind of have a cleaner and a dirtier water? We're going to do the same thing with this. Distilled water, of course. And so let's get started. I'm going to take a look at my enamels. I've got these 4, and I can see that these 2 are nice and wet. This one is kind of dried out over the night. You can see it's a bit, so I'm just going to take my little pipette and put a little bit of distilled water to kind of wake that up. And that's about all you need. We just want to keep the enamels wet. This one looks like, maybe I'll just add a touch. So there is that. So let's get started. I'm actually going to use my medium-sized brush, and I'm going to start with the medium color. And there's not a whole lot of blending in this first one because I kind of like to, we'll work up to the blending. In fact, I'll probably do an entire video just on blending. And basically, I'm just going to take, well, there's 2 ways. You kind of want to have it wet before. So I'm going to take a little bit of water and put it right there. And actually, I'm going to move all these other ones out of the way so I know which one I'm working on. Sorry, you guys. You're dead to me. There we go. I wonder if I can even scooch that over right there. There we go. And before I do any enamels, I kind of look at it up and down, and I make sure that the wires are flush with the piece, because this is your last opportunity to push any errant wires down, and the best tool for that is your finger. You're just going to kind of gently make sure everything is nice and flat, and I can see that that is the case. Anywho, so now we're ready to go, and I'm going to start with this middle part, which is this kind of middle color right here, just to kind of get started. And I got a little scoop of it, and there's already a little bit of water in there, and so it really is kind of like a nice gritty watercolor, because you want to use capillary action to draw the enamel into all the little corners, because if you kind of put a lot of really dry enamel on top, there could be some air bubbles underneath, which you don't want to deal with. So you can see I'm not, this is a pretty simple design, so I'm not doing super thin, but you can see right like that. And then I'm going to do the other side. And now I'm looking to make sure that none, I'm starting with the kind of middle color because I can see if things are going to be sneaking under the wires, because the wires aren't completely flush with the piece. So I'm kind of just paying attention, and I'm just inserting. This is my favorite part. I hate, you should never rush this part because this is the real fun part. Well, they're all fun part, but some parts are much more enjoyable. We'll get to grinding, which it's like running up hills when you're jogging. It's how you grow as an artist, maybe. Anyway, so I've got that in. One other tool that I forgot to mention is my poker tool. 2 poker tools. I have these. I think you might remember them from wire wrapping. This one's a little bit bigger, which is probably my go-to one for this one. Whenever I put a nice field of enamel in, I'm just going to use my little poker tool and just make sure, I know there's no air bubbles because it's very wet, make sure there's no air bubbles. And that's really more important when you're doing really tiny pieces. And I made this one especially for, can you even see it? Where is it? There it is. See, that's the tiniest little poker tool. It's this very small needle for very, very small places, which won't be necessary for this piece. And so let's go ahead, and because we're just doing 4 basic colors, I'm going to do, I'm going to do this kind of bluer one. I'm completely changing my mind as I go because I am allowed. And I'm going to do this is kind of a pretty periwinkle purple. And if you put it next to blue, it looks more blue. And if you put it next to purple, it looks a little bit more purple. I believe it is H80, light blue purple, which seems to be a very apt description for this color. So, but this is why we start with the easy ones. You just kind of get warmed up. There we go. And just a little bit more. Just trying to make it nice and even. And again, with these smaller pieces, I could put a ton more, but the reason you want to do thinner coats is you want to make sure you have really nice clarity. And if you really put thick coats on, there's a greater chance of getting some cloudiness in your enamels. So I'm going to call this application middle of the road, and that is a very technical term. It's advanced here. So not too much, not too little. There we go. Now we have a little X. And I keep washing my brush just like I do in watercolors. Let's see, that one goes right here. And then I'm going to do, because it's so simple and I can see nothing's really escaping under there, I'm going to do my darkest color as well. We'll talk about when we're doing real dark colors like opaques, how you can approach that. But with this piece, because it's my nice warm-up piece, I am just going for it. There we go. And I like how these darker colors are really going to make the lighter colors pop a little bit. So, go put these in like that. And you can see how wet this piece is because the water really does. I mean, obviously, not obviously, maybe it's not obvious that you want to have the piece be thoroughly dry before you put it in the kiln. But when you're working on it with the enamels, it is, more water is better. Clean water. One other thing is, if the water looks cloudy on your piece, it's going to fire cloudy. So you can see even the water here. If that starts looking cloudy, I'm going to pour it off and kind of just give my enamels a quick rewash. Just one time, not like crazy time like we did it when we originally washed them. But there we go. Oh my goodness. And so this piece is done. What I can do is I can use my little pokey tool and just make sure there's no air bubbles. Everything looks real nice. And I'm going to let that air dry. If you want to speed things up a bit, you can totally, but it's going to be dry by the time we finish the 1,000 other pieces. You can take the magic piece of paper towel and you can just gently wick off some of the moisture. See how it kind of pulls it out? And there you've probably just shaved 5 minutes off your dry time right there. So that's our first piece. And I would do the second piece exactly the same. Maybe I'd switch out the two little middle colors because these are gonna be matchies. So there we have purple. What should we do next? All right, purple was real fun. I'm not going to bore you with a ton of purple because I want to do some of the opaques. Yeah, I can't even decide. It's so exciting. We're going to do the opaques because I want to talk about this piece, and it's really exciting. So we're going to get these purples out of the way. That's why I kind of do all one color. Like I would have, if I was doing this for real in my studio, I'd do all the purple pieces. Like you can see, I don't know if you can't see because you can't see really beyond the camera at the moment, but over the weekend, I did the first coat of all the greens because I wanted to get this dragon piece done. And so while I was doing greens, let me move this. Oh, and you can let these dry on a trivet. I've got, for these kind of ones right here, set them on the trivet like that, doop, and then just go set them someplace where they're not going to get disturbed. Don't set them on top of your kiln. Or, well, you can do that if you want, but I wouldn't. So we've got this piece, but you can see while I was doing it, I did all my green pieces. All the pieces that used the same color scheme, I've done. Oh, and these little green things. So you can see I did all, like, this piece right here is going to be, you can see right here, it's kind of hard to see. And when I'm going to do two colors that are very different, like this is going to be kind of a red and with a green background, I'm actually going to do them in separate firings because especially when I first get started, I want to make sure there's no seepage underneath the wires, and sometimes a dark color will just seep right under and you may not even notice until after you fired it. And so with like this dragon right here and this bird, I went ahead and I did 2 coats already on the dragon, but I'll do 2 coats of this green background before I even try to do anything in the middle, because then I know everything underneath the wires here is sealed shut, and so nothing's going to kind of eke under, especially with this black and this red. And also I'm having second thoughts about doing it red. I was thinking maybe a bluebird, but I'm going to think about that during the course of the day and decide later. But anyway, so we have, I've done all these. This is just the first coat of color. Move these out of the way because now we've got this fancy piece, and I've done 2 coats of pretty elaborate shading here on the dragon. And as you can see with the picture, it's going to have a black background and it's going to be opaque. And so I really wanted to make sure that I had everything settled right here before I was messing around with the background. So let's go ahead. I also want to fix, as I was looking at that and talking to you, I realized that sometimes when you do 2 coats, see how like right here, it's kind of bent the little thing. Go. Kind of sucks the wire in towards it sometimes. So before I get too much farther, I want to fix it. Didn't really want to fix it on camera, but it's all right. You can kind of see this troubleshooting as you go along, because there we go. Oops. Just open that wire up a little bit. See right there? Because when I put the glass right there, it kind of like drew that way. It kind of folded the wire over just a little bit. So, but we'll remedy that when we put the black here. It's going to equalize the pressure. So let's go ahead without further ado and do that. Remember, if you've watched the first episode, or actually it would have been episode 3, washing enamels, it's not necessary to wash opaque enamels because, they're opaque. You're not trying to get any beautiful clarity. You just want them to be clean. And so this is actually just dry black opaque enamel. I believe it is L100 opaque black, which is one of my favorite. It's a nice soft black, which I like. And I have some distilled water right here. I'm just going to add the water. Oops, it's hard to work like that. And you can see, looks a little milky, but you know what? It doesn't bother me. If I had this milkiness on on a transparent enamel, I'd be concerned, but because it's not, I'm going to pour some of that off just a little bit so we're not looking at that. There we go. And I have to decide, it's always like exciting to kind of figure out where you want to start. And I'm going to start right here. I just start kind of in a corner, and I don't have a lot of moisture on right here. I can see. And my biggest concern with this piece is I want to make sure that none of this black is going to, because even with 2 coats there are probably areas of little gappage where the black is going to seep under, and I'm just going to, as I go along, because until you fire it, you can totally clean it up. I'm just keeping my eye on that. And to be honest, I probably would use my jewelry microscope, but I couldn't get that set up with the camera right there. The camera and the microscope were competing for the same real estate on my desk. So I'm just going to eyeball this. And you can see also, I'm going a little bit thicker with this opaque black because, like I said, it's opaque. So, but I'm still taking my time. This is not one of those things you can rush through. And I'll probably edit this so you don't have to watch all of this. But there we go. And you can see how wet I'm keeping everything. And once I kind of get into that area right there, I'm going to switch to my tiny, tiny brush because, see right here, there's going to be a lot of shenanigans. Getting a little bit, and I'm kind of setting it up here and letting the water kind of suck it in like that. And these are the areas where you need the fine pokey tool. I'm sure that there is a name for this tool. Is it an awl? No. Pokey tool. There we go. Because I just want to make sure that that's where you're going to get the air bubbles. And you might not even discover the air bubbles until you are grinding and you grind through the top layer, and then all of a sudden there's a chasm of air. And there, you can fix that. There's definite remedies, but the best problem solving is not having the problem in the first place. So here we go. But you can kind of see it's going to take a while. So I'm probably going to pause right now and finish up, and then we will do a little bit more enameling soon. All right, pausing now. Thanks. Welcome back. As you can see, I just spent the last half hour or so getting all of this black enamel into all these little nooks and crannies. I did end up breaking out my jewelry microscope to get these areas right in here, and I am very pleased with it. I've cleaned out I've checked to make sure that there's no black enamel that's kind of crept into any of the green, and I am going to let that dry very thoroughly. And, to be honest, I want it to be so bone dry, because if there's any moisture in any of this black enamel, when I put it in the kiln, it's going to go whoop as it vaporizes and push the enamel in like a powder and put a fine dusting of black enamel over my green areas, which will not make me very happy. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on a trivet and set it in a secure and dry place and let it dry seriously at least an hour just to make that happen. Oh, and this is my first, basically at this point, I'm very pleased with the colors of the green. So I'm really not doing any more color work in this piece. I'm going to keep adding the black until I get to the top, and I'm probably going to switch over to clear enamel I'm probably going to put one more coat of black on just without anything else, because then there's two coats. It's equalized, 2 coats of black, 2 coats of the green. And then I'm going to switch over to clear enamel on top of the clear, and then I'm going to keep going with the opaque all the way to the top. So I probably have maybe 3 or 4 more coats of enamel to put on this thing before I'm going to get to the next step, which you'll just have to imagine, because we're not going to do that right now. So I'm going to let this dry. I'll fire it in my kiln, and then we'll go from there. So, but I'm going to set that aside. There we go. Say goodbye. I thought we could do a little bit of blending. And I have these real simple, these are sweet little, they're cufflinks. They're going to be little devil wings or bat wings. And I kind of want to see, this is a really good way to learn shading, because we're not really even shading with color. We're going to be shading with black and white. We're going to use these colors right here. These are my favorite kind of shades of gray. And 93, 91, and 90. They have, I think, 2 other in-between colors, but you kind of have a dark, a medium, and a very light. And also, you have to think that the background itself has a very silvery color. So this is almost super pale on this. And so before I do anything, before you start shading, I like to obviously draw it out, and you can see I've done this little thing, which I haven't done any shading on. It's super convenient because it's black and white, so I don't have to even break out the colored pencils, and you can see I've got this. And I'd like to kind of figure out where I'm going to go with my shading, and so I use my pencil. And I think, to be honest, because of the way the natural color of the silver here, I like to have the darker colors be right next to that silver line, because it's really going to make this pop. And so I'm going to have a light area in here, and so I'm going to just do a little bit, like my darker area is going to be in here. And then I'm just kind of thinking about it, how I want to do my shading. And so I kind of want to have my darker areas here, and then the lighter, just to give this a little bit of, and this will be a little bit darker too. So you can kind of see where I'm going to go with that. I'll do both sides just because I like coloring, and I'm not even being super fancy about it. I am just kind of getting it in my head, getting myself right with what I'm going to be doing here, because once you start putting the enamels on, sometimes it's hard to tell. The grays are easy because you can kind of see what's going on, but when you're doing reds and stuff, it's hard to know where you wanted to go, and so it's good to have a template. So I've got this template where I've shaded it in, and now I'm going to bring this little thing back because it's so much easier if these things are flat. We'll start with one right there. Hold on. Let me see if I can get a little bit of that. And I'm going to keep this right there as my template. I guess I could tear it like that, so I can kind of see where I'm going to go like that. And then I'm going to get my brush, which I have lost already. And remember, we're going to do a little bit of wet just to kind of get everything flowing, because when you're doing blending, you want even more water, because the water is really going to be what helps with your blending. And I'm going to start with the lightest, which I know is going to be this middle area right here. So I'm going to use the N90. I think they're all just called black, but I kind of have labeled them pale black, very pale black. So I'm going to start right here in the middle and just get it right in that thing. And you could even start with clear if you really want it to be extra, extra pale. It's very much like watercolors. Instead of adding white, you want to utilize the color of the paper, which in this case is the silver, and so you would use clear, which would be just like using like a very thin water wash. All right, so we've got that, and I actually usually kind of do my darkest and my lightest color when I'm blending. So I'm going to start with, this is pretty dark, but that's okay. I'm going to start with this color right here, which is the N93, and I'm just going to, you can see it's kind of like you're setting up the camps. Like first you're going to put one thing on one side and one thing on the other side, and then you're going to kind of merge them together using water. And you don't have to use 3 different colors. You can use one color and just fade it into clear. That's always an option, but I am kind of I have a bold palette for my pieces. I love really vivid color, so I tend to use a lot of, and you can see how, what I'm saying about how this having this darker color right is going to make the shape really pop when you look at it. Whereas sometimes if you do the lighter color here, you lose that edge visually. So, all right, so now I'm going to get to kind of where I'm going to start doing my blending. And get some of that in, right in there. Lots of water. And while I'm at it, I'm going to do a little bit. It's going to be right there. Just, and you can scooch things around. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and get my middle color. I know and kind of, because you've got the lighter color there. I'm going to stick right there. And here's your opportunity. As you see things, see how a little bit of this darker color went over. I'm just going to scoop out those little pieces because those darker pieces are going to show up. And I want the center part to be real light. So I've got this. And what I'm going to use to blend when these two colors, you could just do this and you're going to get a line. But what I want to do is just blend them in. I have a lot of water and I'm just literally just mixing the two up on the piece. Like I'm not mixing it in a different thing. I'm using the water and the brush. And I could even use a little bit of this darker piece right here. And you can see it's very dark. There we go. And see, I'm going to put this color over here. This is actually going to be slightly a darker shade than I normally do for that, but that's okay because that's how you decide how you like things. But see how I have these 2 lines of color, and then I'm just going to get a lot of water and just blend them in. And blending, the first time you do it, it might look a little bit grainy. You're going to do 2 coats. And you can kind of see how I've done that, like that. And we'll let that dry and make sure we get all the way up in there. And that, I'm going to add a little bit of this. It's a little bit of blending. And like I said, I'm going to set up some sort of a project that is all about blending, and we'll do an entire episode about blending because everybody always thinks like it's this magic thing. But if you can blend a watercolor thing, you can blend enamels. It's really about just keeping it simple and having a plan for your blending. If you've drawn it out, then you know which colors you're going to use and which colors you're going to blend together. So we'll let that, we might use our little magic thing to wick out some of that moisture. There we go. And we will set that. Remember our little purple friend from earlier? We'll set this one over here and let him dry. Right like that. And set him aside. Well, there you have it. We could do one more if you want. I've got angel wings while we're at it. Those are real sweet. And here are the angel wing, the picture that I did. And you can see I've written down the colors that I'm going to use. Medium water, very pale water, and very light blue. So we'll bring those colors in. And I don't normally switch colors so often, but for, the sake of the show, the Sandra McEwen show, we're going to do that. And so this is the very pale blue here. And sometimes I even like to use a little milky. Here's my, I like these 2 colors. This is the very pale blue and this is the very light blue. I think they're both very light blues and they blend really well together because this one's just a hair darker and it has a little bit more purple in it, and this one's just a little more green, and so it makes a really pretty mix of colors. And then what color did we decide the last one was? Oh, L69. L69, medium. Water right here. So we've got our 3 colors. Let's scooch that right there. There we go. And you can kind of see it's very subtle what we're going to do here, like that. And we're going to move this one out of the way, or maybe we're going to work on that one. All right, and clean water again. Keep, as you're doing this, if your water is looking dirty, you want to not have it be dirty. And this one, I'm actually going to go backwards. I'm going to do dark. You see I have the darkest area in the middle, which is going to be, these are kind of my 2 go-to shaders right here, because you can see they're the same color. This is just a lighter version. And like I said, you can also, if you are so inclined, actually I'm going to use my other brush, you could just blend straight into a clear and get very beautiful, subtle, gorgeous results. Or you can blend into another color. And figuring out which colors blend into each other really well is just really trial and error. See what you like. I'm sure there's some hard and fast rules. You can't really blend a transparent into an opaque, because the opaque is going to be like little, you'll see the little individual grains, so you won't actually get that beautiful blend, which can be a nice effect if that's what you're going for, if that's what you want to do. So I tend to obviously use my opaques in flat areas, and then do my blending with the transparents. And so I've got some of that darker stuff right there, and then I'm going to, we'll have to see if this is very interesting to watch, but I really like to see the transformation as we're going along. So we kind of had the darker and then the lighter. I don't even know if I like it. And you know what? If you decide you don't like something, you can at any time just rinse it off in the sink. I mean, obviously don't put it straight down the drain, but start over. Before you put it in the kiln, you have that opportunity to, you know, I'm going to actually do a little darkness right there. There we go. This is just going to, and you can see I'm just kind of going back and forth. So you can kind of see a little bit of darker and then this lighter, and then it goes back to the dark. And what I'll probably do is do this color will pop really nicely up against here, because this has a little bit more purple, so you'll kind of like, this one is just a very sweet little angel wing. And then we'll go back to our darker colors, and you can see I really want to have these little feather shapes be visible. So what I'm going to do is make sure that there's a dark color up against one edge, which is going to make this area really pop. See, even just me putting that little bit of enamel right there made this pull forward visually. It's any kind of, if you've done any kind of painting, it's the same idea. Because just because it's enamel doesn't mean there's different rules of design. There we go. So you can kind of see I've made that do its thing. I'm going to go ahead and add something right like that, And you know what? I'm going to add a little blob right there, and maybe a little blob right there. And then I'm going to take my lighter color. I don't know if you can hear that siren outside. I don't believe they are after me. Maybe it's the enamel police. Oh, there they go. Anywho. Oh, I say anywho too much. I promised I wasn't going to say that anymore. Verily. Moving on. I'll have to come up with a better tag word. So you can see I am literally just kind of scooping and going. And with these real subtle colors, you know, I'm just blending the barest amount. I'm not going crazy. I'm almost just setting them side by side and just flicking the edges together. If they were like a super dark, because they're so similar, that you're going to get a really nice result. So there you go. Remember our little poker, and right in this coral is where you're going to get the air bubble, because there's little spots right there. And so there you have it. We have finished that angel wing. All right, so basically we're done for today. I'm going to go ahead and do all of this enameling without you. No offense intended, but sometimes you just gotta go on your own, because I have a lot of enameling to do. And I will show you the next stage, which will probably be the fun part. I'm just laughing, it's grinding. But here's what I'm going to do. I like to do with these small pieces, because they're not all that detailed as far as the blending, probably 2 coats of color. So this was my first one. Oh, did I show you these little guys? Here's the devil. This one has 1 coat already, and you can barely see it. It looks kind of terrible, but once you get everything built up, it's going to be quite beautiful. So 1 coat on these pieces already. You can see this little guy. I put 1 coat on. I'm going to fire that one. I'm going to put another coat on. And then if I am happy, once I hit the color that I'm very pleased with, that I like, I'm going to switch over to a clear enamel, super clean, sifted, and I'm going to do thin coats of clear enamel all the way up till I get to the top of you can see like here the wires, how they're a little bit taller, but not much. I'm going to go to the top of the edge, and so generally I'm going to eyeball it and be like 2 coats of color, probably 3 coats of clear is going to get you to the top, and then we will grind. We'll do our grinding. Oh, if you have 1 second, I'm going to get the grinding thing. Hold on. I'm back. Well, this is kind of going to be like a preview for next week, which will be grinding, because there's grinding you could do. You could write a thesis about grinding. Anywho, so this is what the piece looks like when it comes up. You can see I've actually added an extra layer of clear, because I like to have a little bit more glass when I'm grinding, and this is attached to a dopping stick with some dopping wax. And here's the exact same piece that had its first grind. Like you can see, I've taken it entirely down so it's perfectly smooth. And obviously there's going to be steps after this of polishing and finishing, but that is going to be the next step, which we'll do next week. So anywho, I shouldn't have said anywho. Well, anywho, see, I just cannot not say anywho. We will meet again next week sometime and talk about grinding and finishing your enamel pieces. Again, thank you so much for watching my videos. Please visit my website, www.sandramcEwen.com, and you can also buy my work. So everything you see is available for sale. So please don't hesitate. Also, I do classes. So that is everything for today, and